PS5 Doctors. How may I help you?
Hello again.
Have we met before?
What, you don't remember me? I thought you liked cars.
You?
Me.
You're the guy that wouldn't stop talking about race cars.
I prefer the term racists.
What are you calling about?
Oh, right. I've been thinking about rescheduling my interview. I just want to make sure that I'm extra prepared when I go in for it.
Okay, sounds good. Words of understanding. Follow-up question. Why should I?
Because if you do, I will give you... Elden Ring.
Fine. While I'm at it, I'm sending something your way.
Oh, I love gifts.
Same. In fact, why don't you give me one in return?
Alright. What do you want?
How about silence?
So what's next on the menu today? That one. To briefly recap, Trauma Center is a series of surgery simulation games, 5 of them to be exact. I'd love to go into all of them, but since I only have these 2 and I've already talked about this one, this is the one we'll be talking about today. So let's set the scene. Imagine it's December 2006, you are Atlus.
No!
You just landed a solid somersault and everyone applauded you for it, so seeking even more love, you decide to try and do it again, but even cleaner. That was the mindset behind this new title.
Trauma Center New Blood, the second installment in the series on Wii and the third installment in the series overall. Pretty much everyone that worked on Second Opinion came back for this round, all with a clear focus on building upon what the 2 previous games before it could. One of which being widescreen.
The game was announced at E3 2007, and while it was initially planned to be a simultaneous release for the US and Japan, it ultimately released in the US first on November 20th, 2007, Japan a couple months later, and Europe the next November. Again, I'm sorry if you're Australian. Overall reception was, like Second Opinion, pretty solid. Heck, one could argue it was even better. There were things to complain about, sure, but it was generally received as a welcome addition to the series. Its sales, however, compared to Second Opinion, weren't as convincing. Taking a look at what released at the time, gee, I wonder why.
Despite its lower sales, I remember seeing a lot of Trauma Center fans consider this the peak of the franchise. I gotta say, I don't know. Let's set that aside though, and let's see what Trauma Center New Blood has to offer. Because its first impression isn't saying much.
Oh man, I love Edition! What was the thought process behind this box art? What teenager is going to see this at GameStop and think, oh, gotta buy that one? This is a brand new entry, so maybe it was to prevent spoilers? I don't know, man, this just doesn't seem interesting. Europe easily got better box art. It may be just Second Opinion all over again with just character portraits, but hey, I'll take what I can get. Moving over to the back, and you may not be a doctor.
Yes I can.
Looks like we're getting 2-player co-op, more on that in 20 minutes, and online rankings. Oh, good, I was hoping to see a debate today. Not much else to say here, so let's open this up. How'd that get in there? Opening up the booklet, it's basically the same song and dance as the Second Opinion book. The controls, the characters, a mini prologue, but there's no world building or terminology page that can't be found in the game here, which honestly is a bit of a shame. How will I know what pus is now? Ugh, guess I'll have to play the game to find out. This feels extremely eerie, but whatever. This is Trauma Center New Blood. Oh man, it really is wider. Another neat little opening that is also showing its age. Is that Noah's Ark?
Man, this book is wild.
I've learned my lesson when it comes to difficulty, but in the process I forgot how to write my own name.
Alaska.
It talks?
Yep, the entire game is now voice acted and... man, is it directed. It's a very welcome addition, I won't deny that, but some characters can just sound so robotic at times, man. Thankfully it doesn't happen too often, but when it does happen, it's pretty noticeable. Before we drop into chapter 1, it looks like we got some operation pointers, basically skippable tutorial levels that'll teach us how to play the game. Coming off a Second Opinion, not much has changed. The scalpel, forceps, gel, sutures, syringe, ultrasound, drain, laser, and the healing touch all return with almost no changes. I like the inclusion of these and the fact that they're optional. If you're playing this right after Second Opinion, you can skip straight to the story, which I'll do. Starting off with Chapter 1, we meet Marcus Vaughn and Valerie Blaylock, the two protagonists we'll be able to choose between before starting an operation. You'll see why soon. After experiencing a bit of deja vu, we meet Miles Hoover and Nancy Bloom, the director and the only nurse at Montgomery Memorial Hospital. The only nurse.
Still got it.
Oh hey, a nun named Sister Catherine. Cool. Apparently a new church is being built. I hope the construction's going well. Later that night, it looks like someone has been badly injured, but it looks like it gave us the chance to meet Elena Salazar. Thanks, Blake. After a really close run-in with death, sheesh! It turns out Elena had an ulterior motive for coming, which was to have Marcus fix a pump unit inside her pancreas. So we do.
It seems there's been a misunderstanding. She's not the reason I contacted you, Marcus. There's another patient I'm concerned about.
What are you trying to say?
Stigma has awakened.
I think I'm done with that joke.
After unlocking the healing touch, which again, slows down time, Valerie wants to learn the healing touch herself.
Just draw the shape, you'll be fine.
Hoover falls over, we operate on him, he shuts down the hospital.
I'm sorry?
As everyone's packing up to leave, Sister Catherine gets badly injured at the construction site of the new church, foreshadowing is overrated anyways. This operation is where we learn of Valerie's version of the healing touch. By drawing those triangles in a pentagon, we won't slow down time, but we'll freeze the patient's vitals where they stand. It is really helpful as a last-ditch effort to fix your mistakes, giving you a little extra time to just go all out without worrying about the patient's vitals. I'll give it a solid nice.
It wasn't the technique that was important for the healing touch. It was the opening of my heart.
Don't you mean the nun's heart?
And so ends Chapter 1. I think it's better than Second Opinions. It really felt like the ball was starting to roll much quicker. Valerie got some character development, and now we don't just have one, but two healing touches to choose from whenever an operation about to start, and both with their own unique advantage. This chapter was more so a warm-up than it was a tutorial, and for that, I can respect it. It can still propose a bit of a challenge, even if you came fresh from Second Opinion. Chapter 2 brings us to Concordia. We meet Luc Rousseau, Chief Surgeon, and Lloyd Wilkins, the professor who called Marcus about this whole stigmatism thing earlier.
I think I know a thing or two about this.
After 2 brief operations, some random lady comes by, Irene Quattro, the director of Caduceus USA or something. Who cares? Some random guy comes in looking for drugs.
You've come to the right place.
3 people were hit by a car. Operated on one of them.
Never mind.
After watching Rousseau take the credit, thanks, Wilkins allows us to treat the stigmatism he was talking about.
But please keep them. There it is. My God, look at it.
Is that what being blind feels like?
This is Care, the hand. These things will swim around the top of the organ, and it's your job to laser them to death. If you keep missing, they'll make a cut, and we can't have that. The difficulty doesn't come from utilizing multiple tools, but rather working on improving your aim. These guys fly quickly, and when they fuse together, they deal some mean damage, so you better keep your hand steady. That said, it is possible to cheese the heck out of this thing. If you laser it, it'll stay in place a bit, so if you manage to keep it outside the boundaries of the organ, Care won't even be able to deal damage. It's even easier during the second phase when 2 fuse together and move slowly as a result. An interesting exploit, but I suppose it does take a bit of relatively sharp aim to do it consistently, so in the end, Care is just alright on its own. Wilkins is saved. Cool. But then a fire breaks out and Wilkins is kidnapped.
I prefer the term borrowed.
Quattro's back, and with Wilkins nowhere to be seen and Rosso all fired up, it looks like we're going to Caduceus. Chapter 2 was alright. Story-wise, Stigma gets introduced, Old Man gets borrowed, an hour has passed. The operations themselves were fun, though some felt like they were there to pad out the time as opposed to progressing the story. In fact, instead of Second Opinion story-centric missions, which didn't involve an operation, every mission now requires one, which can sometimes mean you'll do an operation that won't matter much in the grand scheme of things. But I like them regardless. I may be skipping dialogue in this chapter, but I'll always be down to retry these operations. So what happens in Chapter 3? Well, it's time to meet the fellas at Caduceus USA branch, of course. We meet Justin Everett.
It was gladder ball removal at first sight.
Kanae Tsuji exists, but she's not important right now. Quattro reveals that Caduceus will be taking Wilkins' research.
Okay.
Robert Cromwell, the best character, is introduced. Just look at that smile, he's great. Isabella Vasquez exists, and so does Cynthia Kazakov, Blaylock's friend from med school. Again, small world.
Her heart functions are deteriorating. If this continues, she'll have a myocardial infarction.
This game has voice acting. Cynthia is not a robot.
Looks like we got another random person who has a new strain of Stigma.
Have you tried contacts?
Allow me to introduce you to Soma, the body. Just drain the fella and laser this stuff, drain this stuff and laser the fella, and boom, you're done. The thing also splits itself into two sometimes, but if you drain the fake one first, the one without the green core, you'll be fine. I gotta admit, Soma is a bit boring to fight on its own. At least it seriously penalizes you if you leave it untreated, but it's just not all that engaging of a fight, you know? One tense operation on the brain later, Marcus notes the interesting fact that the Stigma patients thus far have had some kind of artificial agent in their body, be it a metal implant like brain electrodes, pump units, or artificial blood. And that's chapter 3. That's it? Don't get me wrong, the operations are still super fun, but story-wise it felt like not much really happened. We meet a few characters, discover Soma, and Marcus makes his theory, but that's all really you need to know. It really felt like a setup chapter, mostly because it kind of is, but I'm 3 hours in. At this point, Derek was already well adjusted to working Caduceus. Because of this, chapter 3 is just fine. I'll always come back to the operations, but you'll definitely find me using the skip dialogue function here more so than anywhere else. We help a random kid by convincing a rich kid to donate $12,000 to Caduceus on a whim to start off chapter 4. You gotta respect the hustle.
Treat the inflammation and drain the pus.
See? How am I supposed to know what pus is when the instruction booklet doesn't have a terminology section? What, do I just take the drain and just suddenly start sucking this all out?
With a sedative.
I guess so. Okay.
Valerie and Cynthia have a little bit of girl talk about some guy named Ray, and after a bit of roadside surgery, we get introduced to Miracle Surgery, a TV show that does operations for free, with the only price being that the operation be performed live on television.
I really hope some guy named Guy is hosting the show.
I'm your host, Guy Davidson.
Oh, thank God. We meet Leonardo Bello, the fella who volunteered to be the antagonist in this chapter, with him smack-talking Caduceus and all. Naturally, we've got to go defend our honor, so we do. Embarrass ourselves with a tool malfunction and lose an operation race because Bello also has the healing touch.
So it was a skill issue.
Everyone's a bit down on the dumps now, but hey, we do get a letter from the people who are behind Stigma's development, as a patient on Miracle Surgery ends up having a new strain.
A chance at redemption!
This is Ops, the Eye. You gotta keep draining and lasering these little volleyballs to prevent them from touching the cores, all while lasering the cores yourself. Honestly, my favorite strain to fight against thus far. It's fun playing along in this balancing act of lasering and draining. There's this kind of fast-paced feel to it that's just so satisfying to keep up with. You really gotta keep your sentences sharp for what you need to focus on, making the situation a lot more tense, which, in my opinion, is when Trauma Center is at its best. We save the patient, gloat a little bit about how competent we really are, and wrap up chapter 4 by shutting down the show. What a ride! It may be fairly self-contained story-wise, but I still really liked it. Bella was annoying, but he wasn't exactly all bark and no bite. He really was skilled. Davidson was sometimes kind of funny, and as I said, Ops is a treat to fight against. The first operation with the kids was annoying, but again, you just gotta respect the hustle. Chapter 5. After meeting Hans Nilsson going to a hockey game and helping some random sap to hurt himself, we learn a little bit about Stigma thanks to the best character, and Cynthia. Turns out a special type of metal, Culuruma, is required to be in the human body for Stigma to survive, which has been used in artificial agents as of late, such as brain electrodes, pump units, and artificial blood. Suddenly, Kanai and Kashiro, her cousin, get in an accident, and it looks like only the cousin sustained life-threatening injuries, so we gotta save him.
Sorry, Marcus. I should be the one operating on my cousin.
I feel like there are some medical laws preventing that, so maybe no.
Treating him was annoying. Nilsson learns about Culuruma helping Stigma and totally takes it with grace considering many of the products he sells use it. Kashiro gets worse, so we gotta do his operation and get— dang it! After saving him, we get invited to dinner.
You three, don't make a sound.
Oh man, are we getting robbed?
Nope, we're just getting borrowed.
Oh.
We belong to some guy named Kidman now.
Is he a kid? Or is he a man? I don't know.
We've got to do whatever operations they tell us to, one of which being a brand new strain of Stigma. This is Onyx, the claw. You gotta use the ultrasound to find it, scalpel it out, and then inject a serum into it, but after doing it a couple of times, it'll start to duplicate itself and even inject toxins into the bloodstream, creating a maze of fakes you'll have to maneuver through. Just keep calm and make sure you only scalpel out the guy with 4 white dots instead of 3. You'll make it out just fine as long as you don't wait too long or make a hasty, ill-informed guess. Onyx is pretty great. To me, it feels like a much cooler Tatardi. You may just be injecting serums and there's only one, but they can actually kill the patient if you don't pay attention. Turns out that drug addict from earlier was a part of the Kidman family, but tried to escape after being the one to borrow us. He almost dies, but we save him anyway. Cool. Kidman wants us to start doing experiments on human test subjects. Being the goody two-shoes we are, we refuse and they leave us for a second. Marcus takes this moment to tell Elena and Valerie that he was the one who actually created Stigma, but reassures them that he truly does want to help people.
That's okay, Marcus. Everyone makes mistakes. This is just one of the bigger ones. Why didn't you tell us this? We could die here.
The Kidman guys come back and decide to try and drown us, leaving us alone with the only thing keeping us in being a toy lock.
Is he a kid? Or is he a man? I don't know.
Interesting puzzle. I liked it. We escaped for the ending of chapter 5, and you know what? It's my favorite thus far. Gashiro's operations aside, all the operations were pretty fun. Onyx was a blast, and story-wise, I feel like stuff's really moving along. Between Onyx and Ops though, I think I liked Ops more.
I just really like eyes.
Chapter 6 has us return to Caduceus, where Marcus, Valerie, and Elena share all that they know. One important detail being that they may have seen Professor Wilkins working for them as the director. Senthi also left while we were away.
Could have at least said goodbye.
A new patient is brought in from Culuruma, a country that is struggling with a stigma outbreak at the moment. They're here to show us a brand new strain of oh man, we really are just getting into it, aren't we? This is Brachion, the arm. Inject these little grapplers with a serum, slice it, and then rip it out. Simple enough so far, but the real challenge comes from making sure these little light bulbs don't reach the end. You can pinch the arm with the forceps to restart the light bulb cycle, but if it ever happens to reach the end, it'll not just deal damage to the patient, but regenerate any grapplers you've already plugged out, even if the grappler itself has already been removed. Brachion is freaking oozing with intensity, and I love it. This balancing act of pinching the arms, dividing your attention in multiple areas at once, and looking for an opening to pluck an arm out gets the adrenaline pumping. It is so much fun, and I'm shaking. If you ever feel like it's too hard though, Marcus's healing touch does make it much easier to treat. Just make sure you use it when you know you just can't complete the current phase. After saving the poor sap, we head over to Culuruma ourselves, which is currently engaging in guerrilla warfare. This'll be fun. We meet President Moreno, helping a competent doctor with some really colorful tumors, and get a guard dog named Pepita.
Awesome!
We head over to the mine where Stigma is said to be highly present, and the dog gets shot!
I thought Pepita was the one thing they wouldn't shoot!
We ended up healing her, but I still held my dog closely after this operation. It looks like Culuruma's military is about to try and launch an assault to retake its base, and Moreno forces us to help as medics against our will.
Dang, he really is the president!
The heat of battle is tough as nails. The 5th patient may be optional if you run out of time before getting to her, but man was it annoying anyways. With the guerrillas pushed back and the base retaken, we find out that the Kidman family was working with the guerrillas to gain access to the mine since it had Culurium. Kidman died off screen, but we get to use his kidney to save both his lackey and the guerrillas' leader. This was where we started to fight against 2 Stigma at once, and I gotta say, it was intense to see Onyx appear out of the blue and fight alongside Care, so it was a solid operation. On its own, Care's just fine, but when it's playing second fiddle to a stronger strain, that's when it shines. And so ends chapter 6. Dang, was this chapter really good. We fought against a bunch of different Stigma strains. Brachion was one of the better strains getting introduced, and we start to dabble with the idea of dealing with 2 strains at once. Even the operations without Stigma present had their own way of creating intensity, whether it be through scaring the colorblind or— oh god no, please don't let the dog die, I just want Peter to live, please! And so we begin the final chapter 7. We find an informant who requested surgery in exchange for information on the Kidman family. Kidman's mother. We help her and get intel on where the organization's hideout is. It's time for another raid. We're met with a really solid operation that really delivers on the potential of Soma and Care by having them play second fiddle to each other and Onyx. We also deal with some Brachion on its own too. Hands down, this operation is my favorite thus far. If you aren't well prepared, you just might actually start feeling the time limit now more so than ever. Truly, the intensity is high and so is my adrenaline. Professor Wilkins is found with a brain implant manipulating his personality, so naturally we mess with his brain for a bit. Turns out the group operating with Stigma now is called Parnassus, located in Caucasus, and Cynthia was working with them all this time. Apparently she was dating their leader, Ray Karinsky, or Master Vahushti at some point, but who cares? Derek Stiles and Angie Thompson are back!
The Duds return! I see Styles made it to his Peach Fuzz era.
We head on over to the Parnassus hideout, help a few officers, and take Cynthia into custody.
Dang, just like that, huh?
Apparently, Ray had implanted a pump unit that could stop her heart at any moment, so naturally, just stop dying. With Cynthia saved, we head over to where Master Fahushti truly is, in Caucasus College. This is the man who had a hand in everything.
Who disturbs the serenity of my laboratory?
Man, I really must have missed a page.
It's time to face the final strain of Stigma, Cardia, the heart. For the first phase, you simply gel the membrane, cut it, and yank it out. Don't let it touch the red squares, or the patient will have some permanent damage. After getting rid of the membrane 3 times, the core will be exposed and you'll have to laser it to death while suturing lacerations and pulling out these tiny charges that'll deal a ton of damage if Cardia's triple attack touches it. It can be overwhelming at first, but trust me, you're gonna want to hold on to your healing touch for the final phase, as it'll create a whole string of these little guys in a circle so quickly that you'll need it to finish it off. And with 69 vitals remaining, we defeat Cardia.
That's it?
Is Cardia difficult? Yes. But considering this is the first time we encountered it, I felt like half the operation was a tutorial, with the other half pulling its punches. It's challenging still, but oddly enough, I felt like it was underwhelming, especially since you don't actively have to keep every single tool at the ready at all times. I'm still of the opinion that the perfect final boss would be one that has you utilizing all of your tools, and again, I feel like that could have been done here. Maybe slow down Cardia a bit, have it hide into the organ and you'll have to ultrasound a scalpel and drain, or have it create tumors to treat, or maybe even have it throw the charges underneath the organ. Boom! All the tools are utilized and the fight won't just be challenging, but really feel like an opportunity to truly prove that you've learned how to use every tool, both quickly and effectively. As it stands though, I suppose Cardia's fine. At the very least, the music playing behind this strange fight is awesome, with this ominous tone at the beginning before evolving into an action-packed rock. Take a listen. New Blood's OST is pretty great all around too. I may still remember Second Opinions more, but the composers here really did knock it out of the park. With Cardia gone, Vahushti dies, Stigma is successfully contained, and our 3 protagonists do some stargazing.
And that was the main campaign in the most condensed form I could give it. Emphasis on condensed. Despite my best efforts, there are a ton of smaller moving parts within Trauma Center New Blood's story that I just didn't cover for the sake of time. The government's involvement, the connection between our protagonists and Vahushti. In fact, Vahushti's entire backstory I just kind of glossed over. This story is well thought out, and I think it's worth experiencing it yourself.
Even gameplay-wise, I completely skipped over the little tricks the game doesn't tell you, but are left up to you to find out for yourself to gain the advantage, such as using antibiotic gel to slow down care.
But I think I've just about covered everything in the main campaign that I wanted to talk about. Keep this in mind if you're considering the game. It is balanced in its difficulty, but it is by no means easy. In fact, one may consider it practical to bring a friend along for the ride.
New Blood introduces official co-op to the series. You can bring in a pal and as a result, have 2 healing touches at your disposal at all times. Since the operations don't scale in difficulty depending on whether or not you're in single or multiplayer mode, it'll definitely make the difficulty curve a lot easier to deal with. Overall, the implementation of co-op is a welcome addition. In Second Opinion, you could unofficially do it by having another friend use a nunchuck with you using the Wii remote, role-playing the nurse and doctor, but with it also being possible in New Blood, more options are always nice to have. And if you want to squeeze even more hours out of the game, you could look into the challenge missions where we even get a chance to deal with guilt once again. I hate Defterra. There's also leaderboards via the Wi-Fi connection. Yeah, that's one operation I won't win.
And that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about Trauma Center New Blood in its entirety. The only word I can say now to describe it is masochism. This is definitely a step up from Second Opinion. It may not have been perfect. There were a few operations in there that were a little more annoying than underwhelming, and some of the strains in there were a little underwhelming. But Brachion and Ops are easily the best strains to fight against in the series for me so far. It's all about that balancing act, the need to multitask that gets you stressed, but is the only way you can win. I would have been a bit more happy had this game experimented with the idea of dealing with multiple strains at once even more, but for what it did try, I can appreciate that. The story, while I think it probably could have benefited from better pacing in chapters 2 and 3, was still fairly touching and engaging throughout, a lot like Second Opinions. It all came together in chapter 7 and made it so that even though Cardia was a bit underwhelming, it was still very satisfying to finish. All in all, I can definitely see why Trauma Center fans would consider this the peak of the franchise. Right.
Yep, they have returned, bringing back all the Stigma for one final battle at their hardest difficulty. Unless you're absolutely insane at this game, I definitely recommend bringing your friend along for those, at the very least.
Alas, I do not have that luxury right now, so why not try to go after them all on my own? Let's do that. I couldn't even be care. Yellow.
Hey, just want to let you know that things should be there very soon.
Oh yeah. Some of the gifts take 20 minutes to arrive.
That's the beans packing for you.
Oh, what's he packing?
About 3, 2, 1, gift.
It's way bigger than I thought it would be.